Can you open it? It's jammed.
Increase to full power!
It was me that creeps. I feel like something's watching us.
Savick, you go right on quoting regulations.
Hello, computer.
I knew I would.
You betrayed your uniform!
Target their cargo hold. Time to take out the garbage.
Smooth as an android's bottom, eh, Data?
I beg your pardon, sir. Aspires to be better than I am. Come on, it's gonna be fine. 5 years in space. God help me.
This is the best day of my life!
A phaser? You didn't use it?
Swords are fun.
Program complete. Enter when ready.
Welcome back to another Retrek review, where each week we talk about Star Trek, and this week we're talking about episode 18 of Star Trek The Next Generation, and that episode is entitled Home Soil. It originally aired February 22nd, 1988. It was a teleplay by Robert Sabaroff, who also wrote for the second season of the original series. It was a story by Carl Geyers and Ralph Sanchez and Robert Sabaroff. Now, Carl Geyers and Ralph Sanchez, they go on to write and be a part of different animated cartoons like The New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh and Chip and Dale and Barney and Friends. So,
No bother.
pretty funny.
Chip and Dale was great.
It was directed by Corey Allen, who had also directed the series premiere, Encounter at Farpoint. The synopsis for Home Soil is, when the Enterprise D visits an outpost in the process of terraforming a dead planet, they find the science team threatened by a mysterious new form of life.
The Order.
Here are our guest appearances. We have Walter Gotell as Kurt Mandel. Walter Gotell is General Gogol in the Roger Moore era of James Bond films.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Then Elizabeth Lindsay as Louisa Kim.
Mhm.
Gerard Prendergast as Bjorn Benson. Mario Rocuzzo as Arthur Mandelson. And Carolyn Berry as female engineer. Now,
Oh, Ensign.
yeah, Ensign, yeah.
Yeah.
Carolyn Berry, interestingly enough, she probably got married, but she was in the original series as Carol Shalin, and she was not the voice, but the actor, like the stand-in for the voice of the Metron in the original series episode Arena with the Gorn. So that like sandaled, blonde-haired, like toga person at the end of the episode that like talks to Kirk and stuff.
Yeah.
That's her. That's her. She's not talking, but that's her standing there. It's the same person.
Wow.
So that was our introduction to the episode. But before we go on to supporters and YouTube comments, let's go over to Caleb and ask Caleb what he thought of the episode.
I thought it was nice to have an episode finally that wasn't complete rubbish. It's one of those things where it's like there is a lot of the same story beats that we've seen many
Mhm.
times in Star Trek. But weirdly enough, this episode to me felt like this was the first time in a few episodes that like we were going back to the Star Trek formula.
Yes.
Like it felt like a Star Trek episode.
Yes.
And I enjoyed it. It's like a mystery. You have this alien. It's great. It was good. I'm gonna
Yeah.
give it.
Ooh.
Who's at the bottom?
Kaplan's.
Oh, Roddenberry was at the bottom because he's an idiot. Yeah, let's do that. Let's give it the top tier Roddenberry. Yeah.
So wait. So 3 Akudas, 3 Kaplans, 1 Roddenberry. That's the scale. Sorry, you giving it you didn't like it, you didn't hate it, Roddenberry, or are you
So
giving it you like it and that's 1 Akuda?
yeah. Yeah. Let's just do like Cuda. Yeah, that's good.
Okay. I'll have to drop a chart for you and send it and you can.
I think you've done it a few times. I just get confused by it.
Yeah, no, I understand. It's
There's all
not a
these people I don't know.
it's a simple chart and that I like to mess with you.
Yeah. It could just be like hey, what's your number? And you're just like, no, it has to be much more complicated than that.
Yeah, it does.
No, for whatever reason, I always think it's like a 3 point in each name.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, no.
It's
That's how
basically
yeah, it's
it's
like
basically 0 as a
yeah.
Roddenberry, and then Akudas are 1, 2, 3s,
Mm.
and then here's the 0 Roddenberry, and then it's -1, -2, -3. That's the
So
Kaplan's.
there are 3 points per name, but Roddenberry is right in the middle at
Right in the
0.
middle. He never gives anything but zeros.
Wow. Okay.
Because that's the real reality of the guy. It's like we're grateful that he created Star Trek, but
Yeah.
it's not
Uh,
not really great any other way. So
so I get it. Okay, so let's give it a 1.
1 Akuda.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Yeah. I'm glad that you enjoyed it because I kind of felt the same way that it was like a very big return to normal Star Trek, and
Yeah.
it generally was not terrible to watch after the
Really?
last handful of episodes.
Honestly, the other thing that stood out to me was like this was a mystery and it was the crew having to do something and the entire crew was like involved and showed off their like
Mhm.
skills basically.
Yes. Yeah. We'll totally get into
There's
that.
very easily could have been an episode where they were like, all right, like we don't need Worf here.
Yeah.
Is it alive? How was it? I was a talking to your computer.
Can I eat it?
Shut up, computer. Ah. Yeah.
Well, before we get into the review, let's first thank Ed Mark Starr for his Patreon support. We appreciate his membership and helping us keep this afloat. Makes it easier for us. And if
It's
you
one of the fusion reactors running.
That's right. That's right. And if you would also like a cool shout out, get things in the mail like Ed does, you can head on over to Patreon yourself and pick a tier that best works for you.
Yeah, Ed gets these really cool things that are drawn by these hands.
Yeah, it's true. And they
Yeah.
are pretty cool.
Not to toot my own horn, but there's some pretty cool stuff that is available. So
Well, on the YouTube side of things, we had no new subscribers that I could see. But funny enough, Ed Star commented on our When the Bow Breaks podcast.
mm.
And he said, When The Bow Breaks first aired in 1988, and at the time, I had no issues with the episode. As time passed, I got the impression that this episode was planned in the studio cafeteria over pie and coffee by writers with no background in science fiction or medical science or basic human behavior.
Wow.
This is truly a strange episode combining future technology with 1940s medical procedures. This is one of those times when Next Gen feels like a show produced by high school students. This episode informed me that I needed to raise my entertainment standards. And then
Mm.
I told him that like I look forward to discussing this in this our review of Home Soil, and that I couldn't agree with you more. And he went on to say, I'm a fan of Next Gen, but some episodes are not a good fit. If the goal is to highlight the family-friendly side of serving on a starship, the concept should be integrated throughout the series, not mashed into one episode. So when the bow breaks turns aliens into upscale urbanites, just add a Mercedes in the driveway. Everything was aimed at the children being kidnapped, resulting in no time remaining to refine the basic idea of this episode.
Mm. Well, that's some good points. Much better than anything we said in that episode.
No, I know. I enjoy his like insight
Mm.
and how he kind of words things. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's a bad episode. I totally agree with like the thing of you're trying to show that like this enterprise is different because it has families on board. It's a family ship, but it's like you also have to do like it has to be exciting, and
Yes.
also the enterprise is going to go into like bad places and encounter bad stuff in space.
Right. Right.
And especially like thinking about that and that scene too, like we talked about it, like how bad it was when Beverly was like we all knew what we signed up for.
Oh, yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
just like really placated to, yeah,
Yes.
it was just bad.
And I don't think it had to
Yeah,
be, right? Like it could have been
no.
interesting. Yeah.
It's also just another one of these alien societies that are like, oh, their ideas of stuff are so foreign from ours. Like, see how they don't even care about like how they think that like it's weird that humans are attached to their offspring. And you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess that's interesting, but it's not really. Yeah, it's overall it's a bad episode. I could totally see how Ed is saying like it made me think like, hey, I should probably watch something else. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate the comments, the subscriptions, the likes, the shares. We appreciate all that good stuff. Helps us to chat about things and have different perspectives on things. So we thank you all for it.
Yeah,
So
I love
now,
hearing everybody else's opinions on stuff, honestly.
true,
I
true,
I can see how that could sound very sarcastic, but like I legitimately, you and I talk about stuff and sometimes we're pretty much on the same page.
right,
So it is nice when you hear from somebody else and they're like, "Hey, this thing." And you're like, "Oh, wow, yeah.
yeah,
I
it's
never
true.
thought about that." Yeah, I enjoy it. So keep them coming.
Yeah, yeah. So now it's time to get into the review. So I honestly thought that the intro was like really decent.
Mm-hmm.
I
Captain Slug.
I know it was so funny. I was like kind of cynical at this point because of so many like kind of terrible
Mm-hmm.
episodes that as I was watching it, I was trying to like pick it apart and I was like, well, no, that kind of works. Like that's fine.
That's the other thing too, is like when an episode is like this after everything else that we've watched lately,
Yeah,
you're just like, am I enjoying this because it's not like just the worst crap I've ever seen?
right.
Or is this actually like a good episode of Star Trek? Like I don't know. I don't know anymore. It's like It's almost like Munchausen's.
Yes,
It's like,
yeah, I know what you
oh,
mean.
this is a good one. See, Star Trek loves me. They wouldn't do anything bad to me.
Yeah, right, right.
The next week we'll be like, why are you doing this, Picard?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. It's just like they explained everything well, everything made sense.
Mhm.
You know, the guy being on there like, nope, we're all set, don't gotta come down here. And then immediately Troy has like a purpose. She's like, no, he's totally
He's
lying.
afraid.
She's like, really?
He is afraid of stuff.
And like as he muted him and like turned to Troy to like talk to her, the Dr. Mandel, like is still talking. He's like, hey, like, don't come here. Like, I don't like, we're busy. Like, don't put me on
Yeah.
hold and then do what you want to do.
No disrespect, sir, but we cannot afford the time.
Channel closed.
His fear is escalating.
If you'll excuse me, sir, I really must get back to work.
I sense deliberate concealment, sir.
Of what?
I don't know, but it's intense.
I enjoyed all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it felt real. It felt
Yeah.
she served a very good purpose this episode, like
Yeah.
a few times.
Yeah, it was nice. I actually like really enjoyed it. When they get down to the
Yeah.
lab, like the planet, I feel like it was the entire episode. And I kept trying to be like, is it just me? Am I just like weird about it or something? But I felt like Luisa's, like the other scientists' audio, and I couldn't find anything about it. It felt like she was heavy ADR'd, like heavy dubbed.
Louisa Kim, Gardener of Edens.
Commander William Riker, USS Enterprise.
Arthur Mallinson, Hydraulic Specialist, and Bjorn Benson, Chief Engineer. I should apologize for him. We are at a critical phase. Usually he's quite charming.
We'll try to stay out of the way. We've never seen a terraforming station, and we appreciate the opportunity.
How much do you know about the process?
Her audio was so different and so like either like reverb or something that the other people talking like never had, no matter where she was on the ship.
Yeah.
It was weird.
Yeah, maybe I did catch up on that. Yeah, the audio, like there was some weird audio stuff going on.
Because like when they're down in the lab and like Riker is talking to her, he's like, really? Well, blah, blah, blah. And he sounds normal. Like Jonathan Frakes sounds normal. And then she goes to talk and it sounds like it's not actually coming out of her mouth in the scene. It sounds like she went back and talked like over herself.
Hmm.
And I don't know why. And there was nothing in trivia or anything that I could find that like supported that. Don't know.
Yeah, that's weird. Yeah, I don't know. I did kind of pick up on that. I kind of thought too that like when they first get to the lab and she's the only one like talking to them and like explaining to them the process,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't like blown away by her acting in that scene. I thought it was a very like boring like school lecture that she was giving, but also
Yeah.
like she was doing it based on notes.
Yes.
It wasn't like authentic like an actual scientist was like involved in that process. She was just like reading her script basically for the scene, you know?
And maybe that's what it was. Maybe for whatever reason in the actual scene, she was kind of flat and then they had her read and it was better, but like you're saying, she was reading from like the script, like in front of her.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe she couldn't. Yeah. I don't know. That's how I felt anyway, because there was a lot of scenes where she's like, and then this thing is how we terraform this, and then we go to this, and this becomes this.
Yeah.
It was very just like
drony. It was.
So maybe that is
it could
like
be
recorded after, and she went through the whole list of stuff then.
Possible, yeah. I did think that the like computer screen of her showing them like how terraforming worked and like what they were gonna do and like the animation changing was cool.
I liked all that stuff. Yeah, the whole lab stuff, the whole terraforming thing was really cool. It reminds me of is it Genesis?
Oh yeah, the Genesis project.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the
Right.
same, but not as fast.
No, right. Yeah.
But it's kind of the same thing. There's a really funny scene too of Jordy and Data, like very specifically, like zoomed into that screen. They're like, "Look at here's the soil,"
Oh, yes.
and Jordy's like, "Oh yes, and look here is the water line."
Yes.
And I was just like, I'm sure that doesn't have anything to do with anything important later on.
No, that won't matter at all.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It was really funny because as they were doing it, I was like, this is a really weird thing to like cut to and
It's a
have
weird
them
cut
just
in to like
be.
specifically
Yeah.
show.
And then it also kind of was like, it felt very Sesame Street like. And I was like,
Yeah,
why?
I thought I was watching Reading Rainbow.
Right. It was like, why? Why? It was like, yes, and this is the sand level. And you're like, uh-huh. And then they just walk away.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, okay.
Yeah. Oh, this is interesting. Check this out. Here's all the sand layers. And then so like
It was
later
funny.
on when it literally all this scene does is just explain to you too, like when she was like, oh, so they live in the water level and the
Yeah.
sun rays is able to go through the top layer of sand. You're like, I remember I saw the graph. Jordy and Data explained it to me earlier.
That, yeah.
She's right. She's right. That layer was right above it.
Yeah. I saw it.
Thank God we saw it. I wouldn't have trusted them. I would have been like, lies. Oh, lies.
All lies. She knew of the box. She knew. I also thought that before they go to commercial break, I thought seeing Mandelson's like smoke burned body was pretty
Oh,
decent too.
man. That was pretty good. Yeah.
Just him
Yeah.
screaming. And also like Troy knows, right? Which I appreciated too.
I thought that was good too. Yeah. She's like, Mendelssohn's in trouble. And then he's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, no. And then when they walk in, his body is just, it's not good, you know?
No.
I was like, holy crap, it's pretty good for Star Trek.
Yeah, it was pretty funny in a way because it was like that sequence where Mandel comes up and he's like, "Okay, you're gonna go into wherever he called it, like the lab or something." And
Oh,
he's like,
it's so heavy-handed, wasn't it?
he was like, "Do I have to right now?" And he was like, "Yes, you do." He was like, "Oh, okay."
Don't you think like it was so like heavy-handed to be like, oh, look at, see,
Yeah, it
it's the
was
people are bad guys on this planet, but it was like, oh, but they weren't.
that was the conflict, and I don't think that they should have had that. Was that scene where he tells Mandelson to go in and Mandelson doesn't want to, and obviously there's something going on there. And then flash forward to Picard as like accusing them of knowing that life was there and that they're destroying it. And Mandelson comes out and he's like, well, we knew something was there, but we didn't know it was a life. Like it's inorganic. Like, why would we think it's a life? Like, yes, we destroyed things, but we didn't realize we were killing something alive.
Mhm.
It's like those two scenes conflict because
Yeah.
it feels like Mandel like totally knows what's going on.
Well, they set up immediately that like the director guy doesn't want the Enterprise around. He doesn't want them on the planet.
Right.
It's like he's hiding something. Then they get
Yeah,
down there, and then you have Mendelsohn and the other guy,
yeah,
the
Benson.
other he was like I forget, like when I first saw him, I was like, oh, he's like a Wish version of like what's his name? Some actor, I can't remember. He was like looked
Oh,
like him kind of, but not really.
oh, okay.
Um So those two guys are immediately like, "Oh, look at this android. He's so interesting." And
Oh,
they're
yeah.
like, "Oh, where were you made? Where were you manufactured? Are they more like you? We could use an android around here to do things." And he's like, "No." And they're like, "Oh, anyways, we don't have any time to talk to you. Like,
Yeah.
we can't talk to you about anything." And it was like, okay. And then she was totally fine and open.
Hmm.
I was just like, oh, so they're setting up like all of these guys to be bad guys, essentially, you know?
Yeah, right, right.
And
Like,
then they're looking at the computer stuff. Then he comes in and he's like, oh no. Mm-mm. You need to be in the laser room immediately. And he's like, but sir, we haven't fixed the lasers. Like, oh no. Just go on in the laser room. Nothing to worry about.
just keep going. Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth.
And then he dies, and it's like not a surprise to them that like he's dead, you know?
Yeah.
So honestly,
Well,
you
to
know, I
him,
guess
to
to my
Mandel, what's her name there? The Kim, the lady, didn't
yeah.
seem to be pretty upset.
Well, yeah. Honestly, until this almost the end, I was convinced that like they were involved in stuff, like they were doing stuff, you know?
It totally, yeah. And I get it. A lot of it has to do with state, like, don't change the channel. So we got to write it in certain ways so you
Mhm.
stick around. But at the same time, it's like when you write Mantle, yeah, when you make Mandel like so like nope, just leave, don't come here, and then Troy being like, no, he's totally afraid, like he's afraid of you coming down. And then to get down there, and then when he's so like friendly and welcoming, you're like, okay. And he makes that lame comment that he's just like, well, we just don't get that many people, so you have to excuse how we're
Hmm.
antisocial. I'm like,
It's
okay,
the most used
yeah,
excuse when people are being just completely
right.
horrible people.
So
We don't
it's
get many visitors. We don't know how to talk to human
yeah,
beings other
right,
than the 8 that work here.
right,
Like,
right.
oh, yeah.
I'm like, yeah, okay, well, you're lying.
It's like,
And
well,
then
you work for Starfleet, and Starfleet also like scanned this planet for you to be here. So if you're gonna talk to anybody, it should probably be us, you know?
but then flash forward, it's like he's suddenly supposed to be very like you're supposed to be very sympathetic to him that like yes, he got caught up in stuff, but he didn't know he was like killing aliens essentially. So it's
Hmm.
like okay, like well, which is it? Is he
Yeah, it's
a
hard.
bad guy hiding stuff from Picard and the Federation, or is he just a scientist who got caught up in stuff and
That's the thing too, is like I totally get his point of like, Starfleet checked the planet. They assured us multiple times
right,
the planet has no life, and now you're coming here and you're telling me that the planet has life and you're accusing me of murder.
right,
Like those are some pretty serious things.
right.
But you're like, great. But also it's like, well, we saw like sand doing stuff and making like shapes and making like towers, and the sand was moving and flashing lights at us, and we were just like, this planet be tripping, yo. And they were like, never once were they like, did you think it was life? And he's like, no, no, I didn't. Not until right now when we're having this conversation about life did I
Right.
think it was life. Okay. Well, then
Yeah.
you're a pretty bad scientist, then I guess.
When that I know you're talking about when that Benson guy is like, well, no, we didn't think it, but now that you're bringing it up, like I don't know, it made it seem like that Benson had posed to Mandel that like maybe this is an inorganic life, and Mandel was like, shut your mouth, do your job, kind of thing.
Yeah, it almost made it seem like he was covering for him too,
Right.
to be like, well, we kind of thought maybe, maybe this is something, but we
Right.
just decided not to, to ignore it. And then she's like, well, why did nobody tell me?
Right.
But she didn't know. And it was one of those things where it's like, well, don't tell the woman. She'll know immediately that she'll have some kind of emotions toward this thing, and then Starfleet will hit. It'll be this whole thing. You could just tell like that was the conversation that they
Yes.
had.
Yes.
She'll come over here with her female emotions, and she'll be like, "Oh, we can't terraform the planet. This thing is alive." It's just bull crap. I don't want to deal with it. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Right. No, totally.
that's how they played that scene. But
Yeah.
even with her, what I was gonna say, that scene where Riker goes into her room,
Oh yeah.
I didn't know how to read that scene.
Neither did I.
She's in there and she's crying. He's like, "Oh, it's pretty interesting, this thing is alive," and she's like, "My whole career just gone like down the drain." And it's like, is she like admitting to murder? Is she like sad that there's like she doesn't care about life form being there because she
Right.
wants to do her work? And then she's like, well, you should come into the lab and see it. And she's like, no, I don't want to see it. And you're like, okay, so is she sad that she almost killed like a
Yeah, right.
species, or is she sad that like now they have to start over on a new planet because they're just focused on terraforming planets. That's all they care about. And it's just like I don't understand like where she sits
I didn't either. No, I know.
until the very end when they're like, "Oh yes, I was sworn to create life, not to destroy it." I was like, "Oh okay." I
Yeah.
didn't know where they stood.
No, I totally agree. I
Isn't it
totally
funny how like we always are like, I really like this episode. This episode is really great. And then we like, you know what else is stupid? You know what else I don't like?
Well, I think in a way though, it's like it was good, but like I don't know, just I don't know if it was written weird or that
I
was the
think it's like
intention of the episode. I don't know.
I,
Like,
I honestly agree with you. I think it's the whole like we want people to stay glued to the station, to the
mm,
channel, so they
yeah,
can see like Coca-Cola advertisements and stuff.
right,
So
right.
it has to be like, oh, did she do it? Who knows? Stay
Right.
tuned. So, yeah, you can kind of let that stuff slide. It's not like
No,
those
it
points
doesn't.
don't like detract from the episode. It's just one of those things where it's just like I didn't really understand who they were trying to make the bad guy.
Yes, agreed.
Picard straight up like implies to him, like questions him about like, well, is that why you got rid of him? Like, like
Yes,
accused him of murder straight up, you know?
yes, yes. Yeah, and that sequence where they beam him up after we see him, it's like I actually almost like wanted to stand up and clap that they wrote Tasha to actually be a security officer,
Yeah. Isn't that
where
nice?
the door opens and she's like, "I'll go ahead," and then goes into the room and
She
then like
runs into the
assess,
dangerous laser
yeah,
room and yeah,
and then like assesses the body and then immediately says, "Beam him to sick bay with her."
yeah,
Like I was
it was
like,
good.
"Wow, okay." I mean, it is sad that they immediately get her out of the scene, but a few minutes later, also Riker and Troy leave too, so it's not that big of a deal.
But again, even this scene when the guy in charge is kind of just like, ah, man, this is really gonna put
Oh,
a hold on this, you know? And then she's like, we should go to the Enterprise with him.
oh yeah.
And he's like, hmm. And she's like, yeah, you should go too. We should all go on board the Enterprise.
Yes,
It's
right.
just like, I was just like, oh my God, I
And he
know where
kind of
this
looks
is
at her and
going.
he's like,
Yeah.
yes, we
Hmm.
should.
Perhaps we should go see how their hydraulics work. It was just one of those like, okay,
Yeah.
I know where this is going, but it didn't. And that was I think that was what was good about it was like I had a couple expectations
Yeah.
and then I was just like, ah, right. It's always the alien. Got it.
Got it.
I forgot the first rule of Star Trek. It's always the alien's fault.
Yep. You know it. I liked it a lot. It's a great sequence, but I just think it's funny. It's probably my one big complaint of the episode, beside not knowing whether to think that those lab people were evil or not,
Mhm.
was Data. He goes into the room and he's like starts up the laser sequence and he's like watching it and he's like, okay. And it's like, and then he dodges out of the way of the laser.
What would happen if I put my back to this thing that just killed a man?
And it's,
I enjoy him dodging the lasers, but I agree with you that it's really, really stupid that he was like, wow, this guy just died.
yes.
Anyway, start the procedure. I'll go in alone. Just
Yeah.
start up the lasers. Like,
Then the door shuts
oh,
and Jordy gets there and he's like, Data, no.
yeah.
And then he
And then he's
kind
like, open this door. I was like, I
of,
don't know, it's jammed again. I don't know.
I can't do it. And then they call Picard. And Picard's like, "What's going on?" And he's like, "Data's in the room, and
You
he's
gotta
getting
help
shot
him.
at." And then
You
they don't
gotta
do
help
anything.
Data.
It just was funny. It was like a little too much of a delay to beaming up Data out of the trouble.
Yeah.
He's like, but then it cuts back to Picard, and Picard's like, "If you don't answer me, I'm going to beam you up." And it's like, but you already have enough information that he's being attacked.
Yeah, it's an interesting scene. It's one of those things where it's like they kind of have to do it to show you that the laser is specifically targeting a person, and it's not just like it wasn't just like a accident on a whim. It was very blatantly
Yeah,
controlled by something,
like purposely attacking. Yeah, and
And
that was
Data's a robot, and he can be repaired. So, I mean, who else would you?
yeah. It's a combination of like you're saying. It's you got to show that the machine is operated by something with an intelligence, and you also have to be like, well, look how cool Data is, though.
Yeah, I can let it slide with Data too because he's naturally like curious about everything, and he
Yeah.
puts himself into harm's way like just to get an answer on something. So,
Did you laugh out loud, but in the wrong way when that guy goes into the room and he's like, "What did you do to the laser?" And then Data's like, "I
yeah,
had to." And he's like, "A year's worth
yeah,
of work." Oh,
yeah. It just killed your other crew member. Just so you know.
like what?
Yeah, it was really stupid. Again, it's a scene that's like, who's the bad guy?
Yes, yes,
Is
yes.
it this guy? Look at he loves this laser. Only a madman,
Yeah.
someone capable of murder, would
Maybe that's
love
what the
this
point. Maybe
laser.
that was the point is that the writers were trying to be like get you to guess the whole time, never know who's the bad guy.
It has to be the guy that loves the laser that killed the guy.
I thought after Picard accuses Mandel of murder, and when he says his line where he's like, "I'm
Murder.
trying to create life, not take it," or whatever he says, and he leaves the room.
Hmm.
I thought afterwards that the Picard, Geordi, and Data being in the room and they're like putting it together, specifically the line and scene where Data says that, "Oh, the machine like attacked me," and Picard
Yeah.
says to him, "Speculation or certainty?" And Data's like, "Certainty."
Yeah, I did like that. Also, it's really funny too, that scene where the guy leaves and Riker's like, wow, that was a little heavy-handed, don't you think?
Oh,
And he was like, yes, but it served a purpose. And he's like, Deanna, what did you feel? And it was like, yeah, Riker, remember how she has like those, she can like sense emotions and she was in the room
yes.
with you and the captain for a specific reason.
And then Riker was like, "Oh,
Oh,
that's
jeez.
why they
I'll
wanted her
forget.
around."
Just like the writers of the show, I forget every week that she has these abilities. That was my thing was like, why else would she be in there with the captain and you having this conversation?
Right, right.
Picard's gonna like push him
Yeah.
till he has like an emotional outburst, and then Deanna's gonna like see if it's like true or not about like what it is. And that was cool, actually, her being able to say he's not truthful about knowing, but being accused of murder came as a shock to him. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, that's cool.
Yeah, she said something like she's not sure if she read on him that he's caught, like that he's a murderer, or that or bringing up the word like murder like terrified him.
Yeah. Which is also funny too, that like she's not like very precise with her abilities. It's like, hey, he could be really like scared that you brought up murder or like scared that you know he's a murderer. It's like, well, those are two very extremely different things that like you should be able to feel one way or the other.
Nope.
Wouldn't one also come with like extreme deception? And one would just be like just pure like being scared and being like, "Oh my God, I hope they don't know that I'm a murderer.
Right.
I hope they don't suspect me of being a murderer. Or
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I hope they don't find out that I'm a murderer." Like those are two very
Yes.
different emotions. And she's just like, I don't know. It's one or the other.
One
You
or the
pick.
other. He's either completely innocent or he did it. Like, oh, great, you've given us so
Wow.
much insight.
You know what? That's almost the same conclusion I came to, and I don't have any. freaking powers.
Well, this is the halfway point, so go down to the comment section and write the sands of the hall.
Yeah.
Anguish in the sands.
Anguish. The soil between my toes.
So, did you enjoy the fact that the light thing was inorganic?
I did. I thought it was cool. I thought the alien was cool. I thought the way that it reproduced and became like smarter, I thought that was good. I enjoyed it being like in that little tube
Yeah. Yeah, the
in
bell jar.
midday. That was cool.
Yeah.
The scans, like the zooming in
Oh,
scans
yeah.
of it were cool. I thought they were pretty interesting.
Yeah, that whole sequence where they're in the sick bay, like discovering that it's life is like really good. With like
Pretty good.
Beverly. And they're all staring at it and like looking at it.
And it starts like humming louder.
Yes. Yeah.
And then like when they back up, it stops. Yeah, it's good. I don't really understand what made them be like, okay, we need to like leave the room and quarantine this.
In that sequence, it's humming and she's like, okay, that's like why. And then I think it makes another one of itself. It makes another light and she's putting a quarantine on it and like the quarantine like doesn't like feedbacks that
Oh,
it
that's
doesn't
right.
work. And then she's like, okay, well, we have to
That's
leave.
right. She tries to quarantine just the jar, and it's
Right.
like, oh no, no, it's stronger than the quarantine ray. And
Right.
she's like, oh my God, it's learning. Yeah, and it's funny too that it's very rare for an episode to do what you would think. So the whole time I was just, Picard keeps running around the ship and he's like, it's in the med bay and it's doing things to my ship and you knew about it and how dare you know about it? And it was just like, get it off the ship, Picard. Like, why is it still on the ship?
Right.
And then they're like, all right, we're ready to beam it out. And they're like, oh no, it's eating the beam. But I was like very like happy that they were like, okay, just beam this thing back to the planet. Like
Right.
we don't need to study it on the ship anymore. Like just get rid of it. Obviously it didn't work, but still.
Yeah.
Because wouldn't that be your first thought? Like, oh, this thing is like reproducing and using the energy of the ship, and you're like, all right, and then get it off the ship. Then I don't.
Oh yeah, totally.
It is funny to me too that Picard gives this whole speech about like the first rule of Starfleet is to do no harm.
Oh yeah.
And then like this thing starts immediately like trying to do stuff and gain energy and reproduce, and they still don't really understand it because they can't communicate with it. And Picard's like, I won't have it harm any person on the ship. We're gonna blow it up. We're gonna blow it up immediately. It's like, oh, so do no harm unless an unknown thing is trying to do harm to the Enterprise. Then basically that's the first rule of Starfleet. Is that what it is? Don't you remember? I have families on this ship, and a lot of them were just kidnapped last week, and I will not stay. I will not allow this to happen again.
It was pretty good. I don't remember exactly when it happens, but there was a scene where Mandel's back in Picard's ready room and he's like, he says something, and then the actor kind of was over the top with his performance. I forget what exactly happens, but
I think when he's being accused of murder, he like leaves and he turns around and says something. He says something very weird, or like he lost his voice or something.
yes, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah,
I create life. I wouldn't take
it. Yeah.
I was just like, what?
I create life. I don't take it.
So the really funny part before the confusing Riker, Louisa Kim scene was Tasha and Troy are put on like research of these people, and then they're telling Riker, and they're like, basically, like in a very
Oh,
generalization, they're like, we can't figure out, we as
yeah, it
women
was
can't figure out
so
the woman,
stupid.
so we'll send in the men.
Perhaps you'll be able to find out, with your sexual ways.
And then he goes in and he doesn't do anything, he just talks to her. He's just normal. He doesn't even like put moves on her, he just talks to her.
No.
It's
Yeah,
not
that
locked.
was ridiculous. That was ridiculous. As soon as you started talking about it, I was just like, oh my God, that's right. I remember this scene. They're like, yeah, we've read about all her background and all her things. Well, but we'll never know for sure,
Yeah.
aside from just talking to her. But if you went in there and talked to her,
We'd get so much more information.
if you went, I tell you right now, Riker, if you went in there with your hairy chest and you put your foot up on the bed and you said, "Listen to me," she'll listen to you. It's like
Yeah.
Roddenberry showed up for this one last scene of this episode to write,
Yep. Yep. Yeah. The other thing that was funny was just the part where it's like now there's two of them. They were like, oh my God.
Oh my God. Burn it.
Burn it.
Burn this room to the ground.
Yeah, so you made me laugh because that other part where I don't know, it made sense, but I also was it felt like I guess it was another one of those scenes where like Jordy and Data are pointing at the graph and they're like, this is the sand and this is the water. Was another scene like that was when Jordy is like germanium and he's like, and then they're like a reason for it to be conductive, and then it's like selenium. That's how it gets conducted. And they keep going through all these things. And then it gets to Worf, and then he's talking, and he's like, "Shut up!" And that was like cool. What a great way to use Worf.
Mm. I think Worf is legitimately the one that was like, "Oh, that's a material that's conductive.
Yeah,
Know it well." All it was just a way to explain to the audience, like,
yeah, right.
this thing basically is like made to create its own power and gain
Yes,
power and create its own electricity.
and like that electricity gives it more power, and that power gives it more electricity. It's like it was just like feeding into itself, right?
Yeah, and also explain that like it's not stealing power from the ship because it produces its own electricity, so
Right.
it's not like stealing power from the ship. And you're like, got it.
So this was definitely the first time I 100% was like this would be dumb from a person like a person just watching the show for the very first time perspective
Hmm.
was when they cut to engineering and that lady is sitting there and she's talking and she's like, "Oh, you better get down here. It's like it's not good." And then Riker goes down and she's just some random ensign
Yeah.
and it's like how how do you not have a chief engineer? It's crazy that it's just some rando officer. Now it's like, yes, it was
We
nice that it was like a returning person from Star Trek. Like I get it, but like make her I don't know, you've already changed the engineer like two times. Just make her the engineer. Why make her an ensign?
I'm not gonna get into it again, but it's just so fascinating to me that they just didn't care about having an engineer, like a chief engineer, or they just kind of forgot what like how things work from show to show. It's just so funny going from Scotty to absolutely nobody.
Right. So obviously people on the review can't see it, but I can see it. I see that you enjoyed the light thing calling humans bags of water.
Oh yeah.
Because your thing says bag of
Mostly bags of water.
yeah. Because your name here on Zoom is bag of mostly whiskey.
Yeah. That's pretty funny. I think it almost was like this is the most offensive thing Picard has ever like heard in his life, you know?
Yes.
Mostly bag of water. Get your how dare you? It was funny too in that scene that Data immediately was like, yeah, it's pretty much true, sir. Like you are 95%
The
water.
ugly bag hurt us.
ugly bag of mostly want to hurt us.
We have
Too
made
late.
war
We
with
have
you.
created war. We don't even understand the concept of war, but we have engaged in war. Take this. And the ship rocks.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Please.
And one of these. Oh my God.
Please.
The concept of just like the ship being just rocked and just
Yes.
by this tiny little speck of light,
Yeah.
Oh, it's very funny.
Well, now it's time for trivia.
Oh, not again. All right, now you're overacting.
So weirdly, there wasn't like a ton of stuff to come across, which I was kind of sad with. I figured there'd be a lot more. I even went on to like Wikipedia and tried to find some extra stuff, and there wasn't anything. So I only got two things here. So this was the final episode of the series on which Gene Roddenberry acted as head writer. And
Nice.
Maurice Hurley took over the control of the writing staff starting with the following episode. So next week's episode is a different head writer.
So we know what part of this episode he did right then, huh?
Yeah. And the other obvious thing, because you were touching on it, and I think you were being silly, but it's also what many fans felt too at the time, which is I love that you touched on it. Many people, when they watched this episode when it came out in '88, were like, "Isn't this just the Horda episode?"
Yeah, it definitely is.
It's like, oh, people are
Miners on a planet
right,
hurting alien
inorganic
life
lab.
forms.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
The alien takes revenge.
No.
A lot can happen in 3 minutes.
Right. And instead of having Spock go like, anguish, they have the computer do it, basically. War, pain, murder. Yeah, so. Yeah.
We desire to be in the sand.
Right, exactly. And according to Maurice Hurley, the production was troubled for this episode. He says, an interesting idea, but the execution fell apart. I thought it was a wonderful idea. If you could think of all the problems you could possibly put together in one episode, we had it in that one. Casting, sets, location, time, the fact that the director was getting pages the day before we had to shoot, that was a real tough show to do.
That sounds horrible. I don't understand how that stuff happens.
Me either. And that was the thing I wanted to like, because it kind of seemed like when he said casting and some other stuff about like the writing, it made me think like, okay, well, it makes it feel like she is ADR, like she is dubbed over. Like, okay, what happened? Like, talk about it. But I couldn't find anything. So.
Yeah, was she just a really bad actor?
Right. I don't know.
It makes me think maybe too, like she didn't have like her English wasn't great, but like that scene between her and Riker, like she's fine. So
yeah,
I don't think that's what it is.
It did seem like I had to go back and watch it, but it did seem like that scene where it's just him and her in the room and she's crying, like her voice quality wasn't dubbed over, but the rest of it was. Because literally every time she talked, I don't know, it was just weird.
Oh, Riker, I don't want you to see me like this.
But I do want you to see me like this.
Oh, no. I have to get back to terraform the planet. I don't want you to think I'm like this. Oh, Yeah, I don't know. That's really interesting, though, that they had like all these issues with this episode. And like we were saying, like this episode is pretty much just like copy and paste.
Yeah.
So like it shouldn't have been too hard to like write or nail down like the story beats. It's just like these miners discovered an alien entity on the planet. The alien becomes like cognitive and like talks to the crew and wants to be back on the planet. Like that's pretty much it. I was hoping you were gonna have trivia on what they
I know.
used to make the alien, whether or
I
not they
know.
had like LEDs in this time period, which maybe they did.
No, I know 100%. I was looking for so much more like, what did they base the design off of? What was this thing? Was it? It was like there was nothing. It was all this like there was a couple other
It's
things and that was it.
Did somebody build like the crystal, or did they just like find that crystal somewhere and that became? It almost looked like candy, didn't it? Look like a.
A little bit. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. Well, yeah, we come back from trivia and were you satisfied with the resolution of this episode?
Yeah, I thought this was good.
Yeah, I thought they tied everything up really nicely and it actually again, and you hit on it when we first started the review that this is how a Star Trek episode is supposed to generally be like it's okay that there's weird issues, but like as a story, this is how it should be.
Yeah, I feel like it got wrapped up. It wasn't hokey. It wasn't like a big comedy fest at the end. It just was
Right.
like they came to an understanding. They actually communicated with this thing. This thing doesn't trust them
Yeah.
and won't trust them for another 30 centuries. It was cool how Data discovered that it needs like light so they could like dim the lights in the bay, and it worked. I thought that was cool.
Yep.
And basically just telling it like, hey, we want to send you home as badly as you want to be home. So I did. I liked it. I liked that whole. Thought that was a good ending.
I like the part where he's like, "You have to trust us," and he's like, "No, but maybe."
I like how they just leave all the lab stuff there on the planet and just like,
Oh
we can
yeah.
never set foot on this place ever again. I did like how Picard was like, yeah, so I put like a note in the thing, like this planet's on quarantine. Don't go there.
Come back in 3 centuries. Well, that is the review. But before we conclude, let's do the thing that everyone's been waiting for.
Caleb?
So, Caleb, who gets the Erica Ortegas Award for being the most unlikable?
I'm gonna go with the main guy on the base.
Oh, Mando, yeah.
He was like immediately hostile and
Yeah, I
for
would
no
agree.
reason, really.
There's not really anybody else in the episode who's like kind of a jerk. Yeah, other than maybe the alien, but he's just defending himself.
Yeah.
Okay, well, who gets the Elizabeth Cutler Award for being the most forgettable?
The guy that gets killed by the laser.
Oh, Mandelson.
Yeah. I thought they were gonna set him up to be kind of like buddies with Data and Geordi. They were all getting like real excited about like, oh, could your readings have been this? It's like, that's what I thought. That's what I thought at first. And then he was like, hey, no, don't talk to these people. You need to leave. And like immediately just killed them off.
Well, what gets the Mugatu Award for being the best alien of the episode?
Oh, that's got to be the glowing Horda.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty funny. Decent design. Like you said, that magnification bit was pretty cool.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked how it looked like a structure.
Well, next is the Trip Tucker Award for being the MVP of the episode.
Data.
Ooh, Data. Okay.
He figures out about the laser. He finds out at the end that it's sensitive to light. So those are all pretty good things, you know.
I agree. Well, next is the Spock Award for the best line of the episode.
I don't remember. It was during that interrogation scene though.
Okay.
Where Deanna was like listening. It's after he leaves the room. Picard has this good line.
Was it the obsessed man thing?
Yeah, I do like that. I like how when he accuses him, but he also is like he kind of gets him for like how terraformers are like known for being like obsessed.
Yeah,
Like,
it's not. I mean, it's a good line. I like
there's
it.
no telling what an obsessed man would do. Yeah, it was pretty good.
Very
It was
cool.
nice
Yeah.
to see Picard kind of like in like seat for a change and not just kind of like going along with what's happening. I feel like a lot of the Picard stuff we've seen has always just, been like, he doesn't just let people walk all over him, but there are specific times where it's like you as the captain should strongly disagree with this thing.
Yeah.
I think the Admiral is a good example of that.
Yeah. Yes.
Where he's like clear, like you said, he's clearly not like fit for duty. He's insane.
Right.
And Picard's just like, oh well.
Well, what am I gonna do about it? Yeah.
But in this week he's all been out of shape, like, oh, I won't allow this alien to hurt all these families on this ship. It's like, well, but you let the Admiral drive the Enterprise straight into like a war zone.
Right. Exactly.
With all the families on the board because, well, he's the Admiral.
What can you do?
What is a captain to do?
Well, next is the Shran Award for the best action sequence.
Oh, that's definitely when Data was diving and dodging lasers.
No doubt about it. The only one that could come close is maybe when the quarantine field is coming down and she's using all different settings and it's not working. But it doesn't beat the Data scene. That would just be a nice second. But yeah. Data doing the head dodge out of the way was pretty good.
Yeah. That first one is good, where he's just like, yeah, you're gonna have to try a little faster than that, laser.
Well, next is the NX Award for some sweet ship stuff.
I like seeing more of Medbay this episode.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, it is like they talked about
a big part.
In trivia, there was a big section about that new part of the lab was like built and stuff.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, so I like it. You got to see like the quarantine field and all that kind of stuff. And like I said, like the zooming in of the entity was great.
Yeah. So it says the medical lab is first featured in this episode. The narrow wedge-shaped like set was newly built for Next Gen in the space left by the shortening of the transporter room from the original series films. The room accessible by the glass doors in the waiting room near the chief medical officer's office, as well as 2 doors to the corridor set next to the transporter room. The narrow room was determined to be difficult to film in and was only shown a handful of times. When Picard and the others evacuate the medical lab, they exit through a door that leads to a straight corridor on the set with a door across the corridor. When the shot cuts to a view from the corridor, they exit into a curved corridor with a blank wall facing the door. On the set, this is, in fact, a different exit from the medical lab.
Yeah, I figured that. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, it is. No, it's great. Next is the Porthos Award for the cheesiest thing of the episode.
That's when Tasha and Deanna thought Riker would have better success at talking to a woman.
Yes. Me as a woman who can sense emotions and me as a woman who understands women, we have no way of talking to her.
It implies that both of them are like persuaded by Riker constantly to do things that they don't want to do. Like that's what it comes across as, like we can't, both of us, we can't ever say no to you, so you should go do to her what you do to us. And he's like, oh, I don't think that's I don't think that's a good idea. It's ridiculous. The only scene Roddenberry wrote this episode.
Probably. Well, lastly, what gets the Enterprise Award for the best scene of the episode?
It's when the microbrain calls Picard a bag of water.
Okay.
That's the best scene of it. He was like so like taken aback by it. It was just so funny to me. It's like he was so offended. Oh, it's hilarious. He's like, what did you just say to me?
How dare you?
How dare get your
Well, there you go, folks. That was our review But now it's your turn to let us know what you thought of the episode. Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you want more of it? Was this finally some home soil for season 1?
Jeez. I hate that you do this.
You'll love it. You know you do. Let us know down below.
Next time on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Next week's episode. If you thought Wesley was underused in this episode, next week's episode is called Coming of Age. So we have that to look forward to. Well, as always, if you liked the video, like it. If you disliked it, dislike it. Share it with all your friends and family and Trek enthusiasts. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And ring that bell so you can watch the episode as soon as it comes out. And when this video is over, make sure to head on over to Caleb's channel. Caleb has a cool prop channel, and he can let you find folks know if he has any cool videos for you to watch.
The only thing up there should be our podcast episode about Galaxy Quest. But
yes,
yeah, anyway.
So long discussion Caleb and I had off edited. We had a Galaxy Quest watch along scheduled for the 24th, and YouTube decided to block it. So Caleb put in a claim to get it released, and if it doesn't get released, I will put it on our Patreon to just either watch or, I don't know, might make it $1 tier to watch it. I don't know. We'll see. But on the 25th, as he was saying, you can watch our review of it, just can't watch us watch it.
Watch it, yeah. And then a little bit after that, the end of the year, we're putting out our Nerd Holes year review. So we're going to talk about everything we talked about over 2024.
Yeah.
And I will probably also put one of those out for Plastic Underground, just like stuff I did.
Yeah.
All the things I built in 2024.
So you'll get like a little snapshot of both things he created for the year, things we talked about that year. And if you like anything that we talk about in those abbreviated videos, go onto his channel and find it, and you can watch the full video of it.
Yeah, that's kind of why I like doing it, because it's like, sometimes people find your videos on like random stuff. But if you happen to see like an end of the year, like thank you, and be like, oh, that's I didn't know you made that. And it's like, yeah, you can go watch that video right now.
That's right. Yeah, so this is the last Retrek review of 2024. We thank you all for your subscriptions, your comments, your support. And we thank Ed Mark Starr once again for his Patreon membership. Pretty soon he'll be getting January's sticker in the mail.
And pretty cool.
So thanks for watching the Retrek review, everybody. And computer end program. See you guys.
See you next year.
See you next year.